Okay, good morning, good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear my voice. Can you just confirm that? Okay, okay, great. So let me quickly summarize what we have done so far. So in the last class, we actually saw examples of using our classified machine learning examples or classification examples on our data set. So we tried it on two data sets. We had earlier pre-processed our Titanic dataset, and then we applied our machine learning algorithms on the Titanic dataset, which included checking if the Bayes algorithm works, that is naive Bayes, k nearest neighbors, decision trees, and so on. And we saw what accuracy we got. Then we said that, okay, if the Bayes algorithm works, we should fine tune it and make it better. So we tried something like grid search, which went through multiple options. And looking at those multiple options, we saw how grid search can uh, find which option works best. So out of the thousands of different examples that we saw, grid search looks at the validation accuracy, finds out the best algorithm, returns to us the best parameters and the estimator as well. So, okay, just one second, my iPad disconnected. Okay. Give me a second, I'm just joining again. Okay, so grid search basically helped us to find out which algorithm, which hyperparameter worked out best. And once we had the hyperparameter of choice, then we could uh, train our algorithm once again using that. And once trained, we could use our algorithms accordingly. Okay, so we also tried a solution on a different kind of problem where we looked at the heart disease prediction on Kaggle's platform, and we saw what that problem was. We saw how we do an entire project. So that was a very quick run through of the entire project, starting from exploration to data exploration, data pre-processing, feature engineering, modeling, visualization, and then testing as well. Okay. So we were able to do that for the heart disease prediction problem. And now I want to change gears or move towards a different kind of problem. We call this regression problem. Okay, we call it supervised regression. Now, regression, maybe one more part. Okay, so when we look at our data, I've shown this diagram now multiple times. Our hope is that when we give inputs like this to the model, we get an output, and we are trying to figure out what is there inside this block by trying different algorithms. Okay, so we try KNN, naive Bayes, and so on. Within classified learning, our idea is that this variable here, y, is, oh, you're not able to see my screen. Just one second. Okay. Why have again been disconnected? Okay. Okay, give me a moment. My iPad is giving some problem. Okay. I hope now the screen is visible. Yes. Okay. So our hope is that this variable y is our variable that we are trying to track. And uh, if this variable is a discrete class, we call this machine learning problem as a classification problem. Okay. In our case right now, what we are saying is that this variable is not a discrete class, but it is a continuous value. Okay. So instead of giving the value as 0, 1 or 1, 2, and 3, this now has infinite values from a given range. Okay, so it can take any number of values, and that is what the problem of machine learning looks like. Okay, this can take infinite values. uh, Again it is got disconnected. Okay. Uh, let me open my slide in my laptop itself and then present from here. Just give me a moment. Okay. I hope you are able to see now. Let me put your chat window in front. Okay. Uh, okay. Great. So yes. So within our problem of y, we are hoping that we can find infinite values of our output, and that is what the that is what the regression problem is. Okay. One of the common algorithms that people use with regression is something called as a linear relationship, okay, or linear regression. Let me get a pointer. Okay, we look at the linear relationship of two or more variables within a data set, which we call something called as linear regression. Okay, and here our hope is that to present the output as an equation. Okay, so here this output y hat is our prediction, and this prediction comes from this formula. Okay, now many of you who come from calculus backgrounds or mathematical backgrounds would recognize that this formula is of a linear equation in which there are multiple variables. Okay, we have variables x1, x2, x3, xd. These are your d dimensions of the data that we are trying to fetch from. Okay, so you could imagine, let's say if this was the Titanic data set, you could imagine that this is age, this is number of siblings, this is fare that someone paid, passenger class, and so on. So x1, x2, x3, they come from the different features of the data. Now to each of these features, we can see that there are different multipliers. Okay, so x1 is multiplied with this constant, this parameter called as theta1. X2 is multiplied by theta2, and so on. And these theta1, theta2, theta3, and theta d, these are weights that we multiply to our model with. Okay, so here we are trying to learn the values of these theta1, theta2, theta3 that when multiplied to these input variables will give us the right output prediction. Okay, you can also see that along with this theta1, theta x1, theta2, x2, and so on till theta dxd, there is an additional term for theta 0, and we call this the bias term, the base term. So if you look at let's say the equation of a line, something like y is equal to mx plus c, this could represent the c value. Okay, that is the y-intercept of the model. That means when all of these inputs are 0, when all of these inputs are 0, where does the line intersect the y-axis? Where does the line intersect the target axis? And that is decided by this variable theta 0. Okay, so this is a very simple equation. It is also called our hypothesis function. Okay, for this hypothesis function, x is our input and it is parameterized by theta. Okay, so if I have to write an equation, or if I have to write this form, I could say that this can be represented as h parameterized by theta and x as input. Okay, so our y is equal to h of x parameterized by theta, or h theta of x. Now, additionally, we could say that if I want to take this, if I want to take this equation and I want to write it in this summation form, I hope all of you will be familiar with the summation form. Okay. So, okay. I hope you'll be familiar with the summation form. So for this equation, if I have to write this in the summation form, I can write it from theta 1 x1 till theta d xt. But for theta 0, I have to make an assumption. Okay, the assumption is I'm multiplying it with a feature, an artificial feature called as x0. Can you tell me what should be the value of x0 so that I can represent this equation within this form? I'm introducing an artificial variable x0. What should be its value? Excellent. So we should have, if we have to add an additional variable called as x0, and we have to say that x0 is equal to 1. Okay. Now you have to remember this small fact, because in many data science problems, in linear regression or even for neural networks, we will see that this additional variable x0, we'll have to add this into our code by writing a particular formula. Okay, so this is our summation from of the linear equation. You could also understand linear regression by looking at this graph. Okay, here on the x-axis I have my input variable, and on the y-axis I have my output variable that we am trying to check out. Okay, and these dots here, these circles, they represent my data point. What they basically mean is, for a data for an x value of this much, y had obtained this value. For an x value of this much, y had obtained this value, and so on. So each of these dots, they represent the actual data of my model. Now what I want to do in linear regression is I want to find a pattern for this data. So I try to fit a line here. Linear regression is basically trying to fit a line. So we fit a line. This dotted curve that you see is the line. And this line can help us in identifying new cases. So let's say for a new data X, if I don't know what the value is, I will take that point, go to this line and draw a line here and tell me that whatever is the height of this value, height of this point is the value that my output will give out. Okay, so that is the output of my hypothesis function. Now, once we have this line, we also need to have some sense or some metric of knowing how good or how bad our solution is. Okay, so like for classification problems, our metric we used was accuracy, or we used something like uh, precision, recall, F1 score, F beta score, and so on. For linear regression, we use a different kind of metric. Okay, the metric is called mean squared error. So what we do is, from each of these points, from each of these data points, we draw a line to our prediction. So anything on this line, anything on the dotted line is our prediction. And from our prediction to the actual data, if I draw these lines, these are called as errors. Okay. So all of these errors, I will square it up. The purpose of squaring the errors is whether a positive error or a negative error, we don't really care. Both are equally problematic for us. Okay. So that we're not concerned regarding the sign, and we don't want them to cancel each other out. We put the square of errors. Okay. So we take the square of all the errors, we add all of them up, and we take its average. Okay. That gives us something called as mean squared error. Now our hope is that we want to minimize this mean squared error. Okay. The more this mean squared error is minimized, the more our line better fits the model. Okay. More our line better fits the data. Now this mean squared error is also called as the cost function. Okay. So we evaluate something called as a cost function. And this is the formula for the cost function. So let us analyze what this formula is trying to say. Okay. So if you look at this formula, in the interior most, we have this part, okay, which is h theta of xi, which basically says that for this sample xi, for the ith sample, when I give it to this hypothesis function h theta, it gives me a prediction y hat. Okay, so this gives me an answer of y hat. Let me write it down. This is the prediction of my model. That is y hat for my ith data. Okay, so if I have n data points, out of that, the data point number I gives me this prediction. Let me disable annotations. Okay. 1 second. Okay. So this value here, h theta of xi, is our prediction, which is y hat I. Now, what we want to say is, from our prediction, what is the error to the actual data? So what is the difference between y hat I and yi? That is the error, and you can square the error. Now this part, we will do it for all the data points. That is why we run I from 1 to n. What basically it means that for all the data points, we have seen the sum of the square of the errors between our prediction and the actual data point. Once we do that, we divide it by 1 by n, which gives us our mean error. And then we also divide it by 1 by 2. Okay. And this 1 by 2 will be clear in a few slides from now. As we go ahead, I'll explain to you how we get this 1 by 2. Okay. So for now, we can say that the cost is something that helps us to find out uh, uh, how good our model is. Okay, our model depends upon these parameters called as weights, which we are naming as theta 0, theta 1, theta 2, and theta d. And to know how good these parameters are, we put these thetas into this cost function, which takes theta as an input, and it fetches for us, or it gives out to us one number. Okay, so if I have to compare between two models, I can compare their cost function. Okay, the one with the lowest cost function is a better model. Okay, let me go ahead. Okay, so now what we can do is we can try to get an understanding of how our data is working. Okay, so now if I had my iPad, this would have been best. But let me try it with here and see if we can do something. Okay. Okay. Oh, great. Okay. So assume that this is our model, and here on the x-axis, okay, on the x-axis, I have some data, and on the y-axis, I have my predictions y, and I'm trying to create this model. So in my first case, I get this model where I have certain values for theta 0 and certain values for theta 1. So let me write it down here. So I have theta 0 and theta 1. Okay. So for this equation, okay, where is my mouse? Okay. Okay. So I have theta 0 and theta 1. And in this case, the model that I'm trying to fit is y is equal to theta 0 plus theta 1 times x1. This is x1. Okay. Here we can see that theta 0 is equal to 0 and theta 1, if I've not put the coordinates, but you can imagine that their coordinates should be this. Okay, this is data point 1, 2, and 3. Let me see if I can put that. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3. And similarly here I have 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So in both cases here I have 1 at x is equal to 1, y is equal to 1, x is equal to 2, y is equal to 2, and x is equal to 3, y is equal to 3. And this is our first prediction. And for this prediction, we can assume, or we can say, that your theta 0 has a value of 0. Okay, theta 0 has a value of 0, and theta 1 has a value of 1. Okay. So with theta 0, 0 and theta 1, 1, we can get this model. Okay, we can get this model. For this model, if I have to evaluate the cost, that is, when theta 1 on this x-axis, assume that I have theta 1. If I have to evaluate the cost, where would this cost be plotted on this graph? Okay. So in this case, since my predictions are directly on my data point, I would say my error is equal to 0 for all three cases. Okay, error 0 here, error 0 here, error 0 here. that means my net mean squared error will also be 0. That means when theta 1 is 1, my output is at 0. So if I draw it here, theta 1, 1, my output is 0. In fact, let me change it to red. Okay. Theta 1, 1, my output is 0. What will happen if I choose a different model? Okay. Let's say I choose a different model, something like this, where as X covers something like this. Okay. And for this equation, what is my theta 0 and what is my theta 1? My theta 0 is 0 and my theta 1 is 0.5. That means that as X goes till 2, my Y reports a value of 1. When X goes to 1, my Y reports a value of 0.5. When X goes to 3, my Y reports a value of 1.5. Now I see that this model is not a very good model, okay? Because for each of the data points, I have a good amount of error. Like this, from here, my error is this much, then my error is this much, my error is this much. So I've already evaluated the error in the past. So I know the error comes around to somewhere as 0.58. That means that when I take my theta 1 is equal to 0.5, I get an error of 0.58. So my graph would be, my data point would be something like this. Okay. In fact, as I go to lesser values of theta, you can quickly observe that my theta value will start moving up. That is, my error when theta reduces less than 1 will become higher and higher. Similarly, my error when theta is greater than 1 will also become higher and higher. In fact, if I just plot this graph in terms of what will happen if I look at different theta values, I can see I will end up with this curve. Okay. Now, this curve is very important because it gives us the relationship of the cost value. It gives us the relationship of the cost with respect to the different values of theta that will go. Okay. Different values of theta will give us different models. Different models will give us different costs. And now we have a measure of seeing which model is good or which model is bad by looking at its cost. Okay. So I hope this has made some sense to you guys. Okay. Let me go ahead. And I have to clear all drawings. Okay. So here I'm showing the same example, but in 2 dimensions. Let's say you can also change theta 0 and you can also change theta 1. Then what we end up getting is, so instead of that one line of curve showing the cost with respect to theta 1, you could imagine now for each value of theta 0, we have multiple of these lines. Okay. For each value of theta 0, we have multiple of these lines. And if you look at all these lines together, you can see a 3D surface plot. Okay. And what this 3D surface plot suggests to us is that there is a minimum value somewhere here, and that minimum value is available at some point of theta 0 and some point of theta 1. If you keep theta 1 constant, and as you move different values of theta 0, we can see that our cost will go on increasing. Whether you increase theta 0 or whether you reduce theta 0, cost will go on increasing except for that one point. Similarly, even for theta 1, if you keep on increasing theta 1 or reducing theta 1, your cost will go on increasing. Only at one particular value of theta 0 and theta 1, we will have the minimum cost. And our hope is that if we find that place which has the minimum cost, we would find the right values of theta 0 and theta 1. And with the right values of theta 0 and theta 1, it would fit our model the best. Okay. Now you could also imagine this by looking at these multiple graphs here. Okay, so here I have 2 plots on the left showing our data and on the right showing our cost graph. Okay, so this plot, this kind of plot, I have talked about it before. It's called as a contour plot, and the contour plot helps us see heights within a data point. Okay, so what I mean by heights everything that is on one circle belongs to the same height or belongs to the same cost. So if you look at outer regions, these lines in brown, this line actually connects to this line. And what it means is whether you're on this line or whether you're on this line, the cost is same and it is very high. As you go inside and inside to these concentric circles, your height becomes smaller and smaller and your cost becomes smaller and smaller. Our hope is that our theta are this point, when it reaches this middle point, that is, it reaches the valley point, we will have the best model for us. Okay. So the two graphs here, they represent the hypothesis function and the cost function. Okay. Here, the data are shown by these crosses, and this data is a data for housing price data, where on the x-axis I have the size of the house in square feet, and on the y-axis I have the price of the house in thousands of dollars. Okay. So each of these data points are examples of when the square feet area was this much, then this was the price of the house. When the square feet area was this much, this was the price of the house, and so on. What we're trying to do is we are trying to fit this model with a linear regression, with a line. Okay. Presently, the blue line here represents our model. Now, as you can see, that is a very bad model. It does not even relate to the data, and we can know that it's a bad model by looking at this visually. But sometimes when you cannot look at it visually, especially when there are higher dimensions, we have to look at something called as cost, because we can evaluate the cost by feeding this value of theta 0 and theta 1 inside the model. So here you can say that theta 0 will be somewhere around 750, and theta 1 will be a negative value, okay, which is also represented here. Theta 0 is somewhere around 750, and theta 1 is a negative value. So this point represents this model, and we can know that this is the cost of this model. Okay, and this cost shows that this model is not a very good model. As we move this data point, as we move our theta 0, theta 1 to a different value, which is now closer to the circle, we can see that this line has also updated. And this line has now become better in terms of representing our data. Let me go to the next point. So as I move my data point again to the next value, we can see I have a better model. And finally, when we reach the center, we can see that we have settled to a value that satisfy our data the best. Okay. So as you can see here, maybe let me show this as an animation. You see point 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So these 4 iterations we have seen are this red dot representing different values of theta 0 and theta 1. And finally, it has settled to this value of theta 0 and theta 1. And on this value of theta 0 and theta 1, we get the least cost. And we can also see that our data, our line represents the data best in this class, in this model. Okay. Now, thus within linear regression, what we are wanting to do, or what we are planning to do, is to have some random point initially. So here, let's say that this is our cost graph. In 2 dimensions, we have here theta 0, we have here theta 1, and we can see that as different values of theta 0 and theta 1 are taken place, we can see our graph goes high at some points. High means more cost, and it goes low at some time. Low means less cost. Okay, and our hope is that we want to find this lesser cost. So here what we're doing is we're starting out with some example, random example of theta, and we're trying to reduce that value, or we're trying to move to a new value of theta such that our cost goes on reducing. Okay, we are trying to move to a new value of theta such that our cost goes on reducing. Now, this is an interesting explanation of how we are trying to reduce our cost by trying to move at theta. So basically, we want the direction. So at every point, we need to know which direction do I move, so that my theta value, which direction do I move, and update my theta value, so that the ultimate cost, the cost function will go on reducing. Okay. So I hope you may have done exercises like this in your calculus class probably in your 11th standard or 12th standard. And what this basically means is we're trying to find out the slope at each of these theta. Okay, we are trying to find the derivative at each of these theta such that that slope, that derivative, will give us the direction of the steepest ascent or steepest descent. Okay, steepest descent is where we are trying to move to a point where the slope reduces the most. Okay, and once we find those values of steepest descent, we can move in that direction at successive points. And by moving into that direction at successive points, our hope is after multiple iterations, we will reach to the minimum value. In this data, in this curve, you can also see that there are multiple minimum values. Okay, so all of these are different local minimas, and irrespective of which local minima you stop at, we assume or we hope that our model will be tuned to a point where the line represents the different data points that we have. Okay. So since it is difficult to explain in a two-dimensional data, let us go back. Let us go back to just changing one value of theta, and whatever happens for changing one value of theta, we can extrapolate that idea to a larger scenario. Okay. So in this case, we can see that this is our cost, the j of theta, which works on theta as input, and we have this blue line that represents the different cost values. Now, let's say we start at this value here, theta 0, some value of theta, roughly around 2.5 units. And we can say that at this value of theta, we have a certain cost. The cost is around 2 units or 2.5 units again. Now, I want to move into a direction such that this cost will reduce. So, at this point, we take its derivative. Okay? And when we take its derivative or when we take its slope, we can find out this tangent at this curve. And that tangent gives us the direction in which we can increase fastest. So, if you move on this top side direction, you will see the line in which it will increase fastest. And if you move the other side, you will see that the direction in which it will reduce fastest. So this line is called the gradient descent, and the top side is called the gradient ascent. In our case, we want to go for gradient descent because we want to reduce the cost. We don't want to maximize the cost. Our purpose is to reduce the cost. Okay. So on this line, we then take a distance of alpha units. Okay, we say I have found the direction. Now on this direction, what should be my step size? Okay, how big a step should I take? If I take too big a step, then also it is a problem. I have a very good chance of overshooting the answer and moving to the other side. If I take too less an alpha, that also is a problem because it will take many iterations for me to reach this endpoint. So I have to take a somewhat intermediate value of alpha. For now, let us not get into that problem. Let's say we have fixed our alpha and we move this much distance. So when you move this much distance, we find out what is the value of x at this point. You will find the new value of x. For this new value of x, so by x I mean here theta. What is the value of theta at this point? Once you reach to this new value of theta, you can now find the cost for that value. Okay? And you can see that your cost has reduced. Okay, from an earlier cost of greater than 2, now we have reached to a cost of less than 2 because of moving into a direction that was at the slope of the first point. Okay. At this point again, then you will draw a tangent, and by taking derivative of that point, and after taking derivative of that point, you again move a distance of alpha, and by doing that successively, our hope is that we will reach sometime to this minimum point here. Okay, and at this minimum point, we would say that we have reached a solution. That is, we have reached the minimum point, and now this value of theta can be used into our hypothesis, and by using this value of theta in the hypothesis, we would have fit the data best. Okay. Now, this is what we would do graphically, but mathematically that equation would look something like this. Okay, we initialize with some value of theta, and after initializing with some value of theta, we have to repeat until convergence. So what is convergence? Convergence is some way of telling that we have reached to this minimum value. Okay, so let us not worry about it at this point. But what we have to repeat, we have to update the values of theta in this order. Okay, so the new value of theta j is equal to the old value of theta j minus alpha times, sorry, the new value of theta j is equal to the old value of theta j minus alpha times this partial derivative of j of theta. Okay, so we are taking a partial derivative. What is partial derivative? The partial derivative is just that when you're taking the partial derivative with respect to this theta j, everything except for this theta j we assume are constants. Okay, so if let's say we are doing this for theta 1, we will assume that theta 0, theta 2, theta 3 and so on, all the other values of theta are constants, and we are just derivating with respect to theta 1. If we change this to theta 5, then we are just derivating with respect to theta 5, and all the other values are constants. Okay, that is what we mean by partial derivative. For our normal derivative, that is derivative according to first principles, that would not be the case. We would then say that if we have another variable, then we have to do something called as a chain rule. But for partial derivatives, you don't have to do the chain rule. You can assume that those are constants, and you can simply go by bring out your derivative with respect to just theta j. So we say that the new value of theta j, that is the updated value of the theta j, is equal to the old value of theta j minus, so minus is important because we are going into a direction which is reducing for the j of theta. Okay, minus alpha times, so alpha give us a step, minus alpha times this direction. Okay, so that is our equation. Okay, and if we yeah, I will explain what alpha is. And if we have multiple values of theta j, that is if you have a d-dimension problem where you have theta 0, theta 1, theta 2, theta 3, then for each of those theta values, we have to run this equation multiple times. That is what I mean here, that we'll have to do something called as a simultaneous update for j going from 0, 1, 2, 3 till d. Now you've asked me the question, what is alpha? Okay, so the value of alpha depends upon the problem. Generally, I start with a value of 0.01, and then if it is taking too long, I will increase the value, and if it is taking or if it is diverging, then I will reduce the value further. Okay, but 0.01 is a good starting point. And what alpha represents for us what is the step that you take, your step size. Okay, so the smaller the step size, it will take longer time for reaching the solution. The bigger the step size, you will take faster, but the bigger step size has also the disadvantage of maybe moving towards the other side of the curve. Okay, instead of just staying down, it may want to move on the other side and then come back and oscillate before falling here. Okay, so alpha is also called, or another term for this variable alpha is called as the learning rate. Okay, LR, learning rate. Okay, I hope that helps your or that solves your doubt. For this gradient descent, you could also imagine something like this. Okay, you could imagine that at any of these points we have kept a ball, and if you just leave that ball, because of gravity, that ball will start rolling down. Okay, and when it starts rolling down, our hope is it should not be so fast that this ball goes on the other side and goes up. We want the ball to roll down and stay down somewhere here. Okay, so that is another analogy that helps us to understand how this gradient descent algorithm will work out. Gradient descent is very useful, not just for linear regression, but if you also move to something called as neural networks, gradient descent is the primary algorithm that is used in that case. Okay. Okay. Let me go down and yes. Let me go to the next slide and let me show you. We have talked about this partial derivative, and we have talked about what this deba by deba theta j of theta means. How do you evaluate it? Okay, what is its value? How do you evaluate this partial derivative? Now, to evaluate this partial derivative, we can look at the formula, or we can try to derive the formula. Now, had my iPad been working, I would have done this very easily, but on my screen, it is next to impossible for me to write the equation. So let us just try to find this answer intuitively. Okay. So we're trying to find out this partial derivative of this j of theta. And we would say that the partial derivative of j of theta is given by the partial derivative of expansion of j of theta. So expansion of j of theta is simply 1 by 2n summation 1 to n and square of this error. Error is y hat I minus yi. Y hat I is also h theta of xi. Okay, so that means that if I give my different inputs, all the different data values going from 1 to n, if I feed it into this equation, I will get some cost. Okay, and I want to find out what is the partial derivative of that cost with respect to theta j. That means that I will evaluate different costs by trying different values of theta j. And let's say at theta j, I find out some value of cost, and at theta j plus some delta 0.001, I find some other cost. I can take these two lines and I can join them together, and I can say that that line gives me my slope. Okay. So that is what partial derivative, or that is what your derivative generally does, is you hope to get 2 points so that you can make a line. And once you make a line, we could say that, okay, that is the slope of our model. Okay. Now in this case, to evaluate this, you would take the partial derivative term inside. When you take your partial derivative term inside, you can say partial derivative of something squared. Okay. So we know that the partial derivative of x squared is equal to 2 times x and then the derivative of x. So this 2 will come down. This 2 will get cancelled with this 2. That is why here in the output, we have just 1 by n. We don't have 1 by 2n. And we have the internal term as it is. So the internal term we'll have as it is. So what this internal term means? This internal term basically means the expansion of this part. Okay. So if you take s theta of x, this will get expanded to something called as summation of k going from 0 to d theta k xk. That is this part. So derivative of x square is 2 times x. We are left with the first part. Now we are trying to find out what is the derivative of x. Okay, so the derivative of x, if you expand this and you evaluate this, it just comes out to this one term xk of I. And this formula here then helps us to evaluate the partial derivative of j of theta with respect to theta j. Okay. So even if you don't understand the derivative, in fact, I have not derived it well, but that is not important. What is important is once we have our answer, what our answer represents. Okay, our answer represents the slope at a particular theta. Okay, so for a particular value of theta, it gives us the slope in which direction our j of theta will increase or reduce. And once we have this point, we can use it in this equation to find out this. Okay. So d by dx of x is 1. Yes, d by dx of x is 1. Okay, your dx you could say partial derivative of x with respect to itself is 1. Okay. So here we can once we have it, then we can use this direction to help us find out the new value of theta j. That is, it will tell us in which direction it should change. Alpha will tell us how much value it should change, and then together we will have updated values of thetas. Okay. Now, when theta is too small or when theta is too large, there are two different problems. Okay. So one problem is when theta is too small, you may get things like this. Okay. Okay. So this would be our okay. So when theta is too small, we are taking very small steps, and since we are taking very small steps, it will take for us many iterations before we reach to our final value. Okay, and this is one problem when theta is too small. Other problem is when theta is too large. So let me imagine, let's say we have, our alpha is too large. If we have this value as alpha, and we say that for this value of alpha, I find out the curve, and it says I have to move in this direction, but I take a huge distance. That means I take this value of theta, and instead of going a small distance, I take a very large distance. And after taking a very large distance, I may end up at somewhere here. And when I go to the new value of when I go to my new value of on that curve, I may end up into a location. Sorry, erase this. Okay. 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 I may end up on a location somewhere here. Okay. Now, from this, I will take another slope, and after taking another slope, I move to a location somewhere here. So what we are seeing is by taking a very large alpha value, you're actually traveling outside the curve. You're going on the other side. Okay, instead of going downwards, our hope is to reduce the cost. We are actually moving outside our range. So if I show it, you can see that this is a very big arrow, but I think serves my purpose. Okay. Instead of moving to the bottom side, that is, instead of moving to the bottom side where I have the solution, we are actually going farther away. So this problem, when alpha is too large, is called as diversion. Okay, our solution is instead of converging down, it is diverging outside. Okay. Hence, we should hope that we find a good value of alpha. Okay, so that our problem does not diverge, but it converges. Now, how can you find out if you have a good value of alpha or not? So one hope is this. Okay, whenever you take a step, we will evaluate the cost at that point. Okay, so let's say you started out with some theta, and that theta gave you a certain cost. So you will note down that cost. Then at the next step, we found the partial derivative. We used an value of alpha, and we found a new value of theta. At that new value of theta, you will also evaluate the cost. Now, if your alpha is small, that is, if your alpha is not diverging, if it is converging, then this new value of cost will be lesser than your previous value of cost. Okay, which gives you an understanding that you have a good value of alpha. Maybe it is too small, but it is definitely not diverging. That is definitely not very big. Okay. Otherwise, that is one option. The other option is you find the new cost, and you can see that the new cost has actually increased. And we can know if the new cost has increased, then we know that our alpha value is large. Okay, we can know that our alpha value is large, and we need to reduce that value of alpha. Okay, so just by using the cost or evaluating the cost at different points in time by using different values of theta, we can find out what is the if our alpha is good or not. Okay, and we can adjust the particular value of alpha. Now there are many algorithms using scikit-learn that can automatically do these things for you. That is, we can figure out what is the new value of alpha automatically. But those are advanced concepts. For now, we will just keep a fixed value of alpha, and our hope is to find that value of alpha such that our cost will go on reducing and not diverging. Okay, let me move to my other slide. Now the next point is since there are many complex equations within implementing linear regression, we would want to see or we would hope that we could minimize or we could write these equations into a compact form which is optimized so that our algorithms will run pretty fast. Okay. For that case, we will do something called as vectorization. We will take our equations and we will represent them into matrix forms. We can represent them into matrix equations. The advantage of doing that is twofold. Okay. The advantage of doing that is twofold. One advantage is our equation becomes more easy to write, and if it is easy to write, it becomes easy to understand on what is happening inside. That is part one. And second advantage is our code becomes faster. It becomes faster because there are many packages within Python and in many other programming languages that are really optimized for matrix multiplications. Okay. So here, one package we are very familiar with for matrices is NumPy. We have used NumPy multiple times, and we know that NumPy works on the idea of n-dimensional arrays, and that can help us optimize our equations or optimize our solutions very fast. So here we look at several different forms of optimization. So first, we look at this equation. This is our hypothesis function. That means if you give different values of x, x1, x2, x3, and so on, which is our data, then if we have the learned parameters of theta 0, theta 1, theta 2, evaluating theta 0 x0 plus theta 1 x plus 1 plus theta 2 x2, and so on till theta d xd gives us our output equation. Okay, so this is our final model that gives us a prediction. But to implement this model in code, I will have to write a for loop that goes from j is equal to 0 till d. Okay, and that loop will run d plus 1 number of times, which is okay for one data point. But imagine we have thousands of different data points. To run this model for all of those scenarios, for all of those cases, it will take us a long time. So can we vectorize this? Can we write a simplified equation? So yes, if I take the values of theta 0, theta 1, theta 2, and I write them into a column matrix like this, and if I take the values of x1, x2, x2 and write them into a column matrix, here it's a column matrix, but I'm showing x transpose. If I write it into this form, then I have the hope of multiplying these two terms or these two matrices together to be able to get my answer. Okay, and my model would look something like. Okay. To evaluate this, I would have to evaluate something called like theta transpose times x. If I do theta transpose times x, I can evaluate my answer and I can get this value in one loop. Instead of running a loop that goes d plus 1 times, just by one matrix multiplication of theta transpose times x gives me my answer. Or theta transpose times x, even though it looks like one equation, it on the background your program has to do things faster, or it has to do many things to evaluate that multiplication. But those parts are optimized, which means that we have faster code. Okay. So for one data point, it is fine. What about when there are multiple data points? Okay, when there are multiple rows of data. So here we have capital X, and each represents one row of data. Okay, so this is data point 1, data point 2, data point 3, I data point, and n data points. Okay, and you should also notice that we have included this additional one here, and this additional one is for your x0. Okay, so we saw that theta 0 requires an x0, and x0 has the value of 1. This is that additional one. Okay, so by keeping this additional column and by looking at this data, we can put all of our data points, okay, the entire set of our data, into one 2 by 2 matrix of n rows and d plus 1 columns. And to evaluate the hypothesis function with the cost, with the theta value, we could simply multiply them together. In this case, we would have to do x, capital X times theta, and that gives us our vectorized form of evaluating the hypothesis function. And finally, we can also take it the cost function, and we can write the cost function in an optimized form so that we get our answers. Okay. So here, this cost function evaluation is a two-dimensional, it's actually of two loops. You see, this part here, s theta of x, requires the loop, and okay, s theta of x requires the loop, and additionally, this value also requires the loop going from 1 to n. Now, both of these loops can be minimized by writing our cost in terms of this. Okay, so if I write our cost like this, x times theta, which is basically evaluate all the inputs through this hypothesis function and get our prediction for all these values. So capital X times theta represents all of our predictions. From all of our predictions, we subtract the value of our known value, of our target variable. Okay, and this gives us our error. Now, since we have already evaluated this, to get its square, you have to multiply these two together. Now, you need not multiply x theta again here. So the way we would program it, you could store this x theta into one place called as y hat, and then this y hat will be just duplicated here. So y hat minus y transpose multiplied by y hat minus y gives us our this term, and then finally dividing it by 1 by 2n gives us our cost. Okay, so now we can see that this complicated equation like this cost function can also be broken down and written into a vectorized form, which are much faster to implement and thereby will save us a lot of time. Okay. So with this we end our this class where we have discussed at least the theoretical aspects of linear regression, and in the next class we will try to implement it and we'll see what challenges we face or what can we learn from the implementation of linear regression. Let me uh, let me remind you that linear regression is where our target class, our target variable has infinite values, and we are trying to fit a model that can take our different input values and give out for us or fetch out for us a value which can take infinite terms, but it gives us our prediction. Okay, and this prediction is based on all the data that we have seen, and we are trying to fit that into a model. I hope this helps. Thank you so much for joining today. Uh, we'll end our class today, and tomorrow we'll try to implement linear regression and see how it goes. Okay, Nisha ma'am, I will exit for now. Thank you. Bye bye.